big 5-0. We're at the big 5-0 today, Paul.
Yeah, technically, actually, today is a year.
Is it?
I got a message on Thursday that we posted our first ever episode a year ago.
Wow.
So, yeah, we've been doing this for a year because this would be our 50th regular episode, but we have our fitness audit and our influencer review. So we technically have 52 episodes after today. So we've been in it for a year. Yeah.
That is wild.
Yeah,
and
we
have
missed a
made
couple weeks, but
millions and millions of dollars on this.
Oh, for sure. We're rolling in dough now.
It pays for itself.
Oh, definitely. Beyond that. I haven't sunk so much money into this. But anyways, so yeah, it's been a year. It's exciting. Appreciate you guys listening. For those that have listened.
How many gyms have we gone through in the year? I've been to 3.
I guess kind of like 2. Technically 3 if you count locations. Well, 4 if you count locations, but 2 if you count companies.
Okay.
Because I was going to 2 Golds, but they're owned by the same people, just 2 different locations. And now I go to Megaflex, which is 2 different locations. So it just depends on how you look at it.
Well, that doesn't show like what you have to do to achieve your goals. I don't know what does, because we're both in it to win it, and we're both bouncing around based on what we need.
Yeah, I mean, I like change of pace. So sometimes, like going to Elite, it was arguably like about the same or maybe not as good equipment as the Golds I was going to, but I just wanted to change of pace and different atmosphere. So sometimes I just need that. Sometimes I just need a change of pace. And that's kind of where Megaflex came from. Like the idea was like, okay, this is pretty sweet equipment, like arguably just as good. But there's also way less people and it's the same drive for me and it's roughly the same price. So let me just change it up, not have to deal with tons of people. And then I got the second location. I found out the second location. I was like, fuck, this place is sick. And so now I don't think I'm ever going to change, at least not for multiple years if I needed to change pace. But, or if we move somewhere.
Yeah.
Because we do eventually want to buy a house. Not that right now is a good time because it is not, but eventually. So if we move somewhere north of here, which I'm kind of hoping happens.
Like Massachusetts.
No, like north isn't like 20 minutes north. So if we move north, which I'm hoping happens just because my wife's work is like the northern part of Charlotte. It's like the very top tip of Charlotte. I'm hoping that if we move north, I can start going to Crusher Coliseum, which for me right now is like 45 minutes. But if we move like 20 minutes or more in that direction, I probably would just make the drive up to Crusher Coliseum. But it's just 45 minutes. It's like, I think I did the math. It was like almost a gallon of gas one way or something. With the gas prices right now, I'm spending like $7-8 a day going there if I were to, and I'm going, let's say like 5 days a week. And let's just say, let's round down to like $7, for instance, right? Let's say $7 5 times a week. That's what, $35 a week. So we're talking like 140, $150. We'll just say like $150 a month just to drive there. Not to mention $60 a month to actually go there, So it's just like, hey, not worth it right now, but maybe down the road.
Plus, when you get your EV, then it's a whole other story.
Yeah, I'm starting to lean away from EVs the more I learn, as far as like the cobalt mines and the I know, there's a lot of safety precautions as far as fires go and all of that. So I'm not letting like batteries catching on fire to deter me. But it's like the other thing that really deterred me recently was that I found out if you get a Tesla, not that you have one, but if you get a Tesla or something like that and you're using a Tesla supercharge station, you're supposed to hop lanes kind of like a urinal, right? If you're like in a men's bathroom, you're supposed to have a urinal spaced out. It's like that because supposedly the charger next to one, it'll say like 1A and 1B or something. And it's because they're using the same main port of electricity or something like that. So you actually like, let's say somebody's using 1A and then you go to use 1B, you actually cut the electricity power like output in half because you're now taking up some on your side. or something like that. It was a video I was watching that this guy was like, who has a Tesla. He's like, this is one of the biggest problems with Tesla supercharge stations is that you have to hop these lanes or else you're going to cut your time in half. And sometimes you have no choice. So it was just interesting.
I mean, that didn't happen when I've gone to Tesla superchargers, but it is what it
Yeah,
is.
that's just what he said. I mean, I think it's also because you don't have a Tesla, so I don't think you can use like the full Tesla supercharge like experience or something.
No, you can. It's just because Tesla's opening it up. It's just select
Uh,
locations.
I did see that. Didn't Nissan say that they were like taking up the production of like Tesla supercharge stations or something? Some
Well, Tesla
company said that
just
they're going to do it.
you have to have an account with them, and we have Tesla solar panels, so we have an account with them. So
Yeah.
we're able to, for the ones that are open to non-Tesla cars, we're able to utilize it.
Well, I'm saying like, didn't Nissan announce that they were like building out more supercharge stations?
I wouldn't put it past them.
Yeah, I want to say I read something about that they were building out more for them, like it was like to help increase their infrastructure. Um, but apparently in the EU, it's actually a bitch. Electric cars are a bitch because everything's so old out there. You can't just like build more supercharge. Like you can't just like build up electric charging stations like you can here because there's so much space here in the U.S. For those of people in Europe right now who are our listeners, I'm not sure if that's accurate. Just what I've heard. Is that it's very hard to find. I mean, it might be different now, but I remember a couple of years ago, I was watching a video of the guy who got a Porsche Taycan, I think it was, and he's talking about how like he was so excited for it, got it, and then he realized how little number of electric charging stations there were in Europe,
Mm.
and like the closest one was like almost 60. I think he said 90 kilometers or something away from him, which for the U.S. it's like almost 60 kilometers. Sorry, 60 miles. Because what the fuck is a kilometer?
Yeah, I
Um,
measure in freedoms by bald eagle. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, so I think it's like 60 miles or something away from him is like the closest electric charge station. So anyways, yeah, I'm starting to
I
lean
was
away
gonna
from
say,
them just a little bit.
I was gonna say, believe it or not, we are not a car podcast, but
Yeah,
we know our stuff.
a little bit, yeah. I would love a Mach E though, a Ford Mach E. I don't call it a Mustang
Mm,
because it's not a Mustang, but I'd love a
it's a
Mach E.
Mustang.
Those things, I can't stand that shit. I'm like, there's
It's a
no
Mustang.
reason to call like it's all marketing. There's nothing about it that makes it a Mustang.
It's a Mustang.
According to the company, but I just can't stand it. Anyways, I'd love one, but yeah, we'll see. If I can
That
get
was
any electric car, it'd
a
definitely be a Hummer EV.
yeah, okay. So yeah, I'm gonna dork out if we keep talking about this. So,
Yeah.
anyways, episode 50 today. Um, for those
Yeah.
for a quick update who don't know, I switched to from Empire, which is in the Leominster area, to Vanarchy in the Gardner area. Paul's home
Yes,
gym.
sir.
It's an absolute dungeon. It's perfect.
Love it.
That it was funny. I walked in and I was talking with Van and I was like, "Hey man, here's my card." And he was like, "Oh, cash or check, nothing else."
Yep.
And I was like, "Cool,
Oh,
all
I should
right."
have warned you of
So
that. My bad. Yeah, I should have
yeah,
warned
so
you. So it's
then
just cash.
just went and got everything cash. My biggest ATM pull of all time.
Yep.
And then yeah, it's been great just going around and seeing all the old equipment that isn't
Hmm.
around. Like I found a cable preacher curl. I haven't seen ever a cable preacher curl. Like other than like setting up like an actual like
Oh,
pulling a bench over to do it, but this
yeah.
was an actual with the like the decline for your arm into a cable with like it's a dedicated preacher curl
Yeah.
machine
It's the
and
only thing you
it's
can do on
cable
that.
and it is
Yeah.
it's so cool. Like I've never been able to see something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, they got the overhead extension machine too, which is rare. You don't see shit like that. There's so much stuff there that you don't ever see, like the high curls. You seen that one yet in the other room?
So
In the
I saw
second
it
room?
and I was trying to figure out how to use it and I haven't figured it out yet.
Yeah, so
So
you put your elbows up on the pads and then
yeah.
you curl like this. So it's like a high curl. It's kind of like doing cable face curls or whatever, like face pulls like this,
Yeah.
but it's up on the machine. So you're doing the same kind of movement, but it's machine based. That one was cool when you got that. Everybody was using it when you got that in.
Yeah.
There is the super lying leg curl that he got, which is next to the T-bar row,
Yep,
kind
I
of close
saw
to
that.
that cable machine. So when I was there last, a month ago, he was telling me the story about that where he had to drive to Long Island to get it and he ended up hitting traffic because he hit New York City like during rush hour.
Oh, gee.
So he was like 6, 7 hours into this drive that should have been like 4. And he like almost turned around because he was over it. But it was the only place you can get this one machine at. And he said he just decided to stick it out and got it and brought it back. But anything that says any sort of leg equipment that says super in it is fucking sick. I don't know why
Yep.
it's called super. It's just the way it's driven, or if it's just the way the weight is displaced. I'm not sure what actually makes it super. I think it's just the way the weight is displaced, because super leg extension and super leg curls, it's like chain driven, and the like bar that actually holds the weight between the pads is like between your legs. So like the line leg curl, like you know what I'm talking about, it's like between your legs.
Yeah.
Same with the leg extension that they have there. That's a super leg extension. The bar that actually has the weight attached to it is between your legs. So I think that's what makes it a super leg whatever. But I don't know. I have no idea. That's just my guess.
Well,
So one similarity.
my favorite thing I hit yesterday, because I did a leg day yesterday, but I'm coming off of so many leg injuries that I still can't do much of anything. Like, I'm literally just in there trying to maintain what I have. And they have a seated leg curl that it's like hitting the NOS on like Fast and Furious. Like, you have 2 bars that you push forward to help the weight get up. You slide into it, then you're seated kind of like at a little bit of an incline, and then you're curling, and it's like it's called like the belt curl, because there's a belt that connects the weight to the actual piece that you're moving, and it's just
Mhm.
such a cool little piece of equipment. But yeah, they have a lot of wonky stuff. It's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that gym. They got some old stuff you'll never find anywhere. They got those new in the side room in the back. I tried those new the new chest press machine over there. That's like
Hmm.
independent. I love that. So it's pin loaded chest press. I mean, it's not the only thing on the market that's like it, but each arm is independent. So that's sick. I love that. Some of my favorite equipment is the hammer strength equipment. It's got 2 pin stacks on each side, so one on each
Yep.
side, and it's independent. I love that. But
Well,
yeah, that machine does the same thing.
they have the unilateral leg extension too. I've never seen one of those. I've only
Yeah.
seen joint leg extensions, and I mean, you can do single leg extension on a joint one, but like, you just lower the weight and just use one leg. But this is one that's truly like separated half and half. So that never seen one like that either.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's sick. They got cool equipment. I'm glad you're going there now.
Yeah, there
How's the
was
drive?
one oh bro,
Nothing.
I can walk there.
Yeah, exactly.
And in fact, my girlfriend and I are looking at a place that would actually be like I could crawl there if I need to. Like, it's literally 2 streets off of it.
That's awesome. I wish I was that close to the gym. That'd be nice.
Yeah. There was one machine we were trying. It's a leg press, and the machine moves with you, and you're lying completely horizontal.
Yeah,
Um,
it's probably a hoist or something like that.
Yeah, but it wasn't oiled, so it was creaking, like, and so, and my girlfriend was in it, and she got stuck, and she's like, Did the lock, like, engage?" And I was like, "No, I didn't see anything," and we just had to force it back into place, and I'm like, "Alright, we're not gonna use that one."
Yeah, that's some of the equipment there. It's funny. They like it's just some of it's just so old. Um, you just got to keep oiling it. But yeah, it's fun. It's every piece has got its like I was going there long enough to really like know the quirks of each piece. Each piece almost
Yeah.
has like a personality you have to learn,
Yep.
and it's like it's got its thing. Each piece has got its thing. There's something that you got to avoid, or something you got to like the chest fly, the pec deck there.
Yep.
The plates in the pins will get stuck. So like you'll do like let's say
I
like you do
felt
like
that,
100
actually.
pounds. You do like 100 pounds and 110 will come up.
Well, so
And then
what
it'll
happened
drop in the middle of the rep.
that happened. I was
Yeah.
doing it, and I heard a big clang, and I was like, "I'm at the top of the rep." Like, the weight
Yeah.
is not hitting down. I was like looking around. I was the only one in the gym, and I was like, "What the fuck just happened?"
Yeah. Yeah, it sticks. I don't know how that happens at all, but it must have been just like grease or something built up and it just sticks and it'll literally carry another pinned plate with it. And I'm just like I'll be doing like rear delt flies and I'm like, fuck, this is heavy. And I'm like, fourth rep in, and then all of a sudden it gets lighter. And I'm like, oh, it's like ding. I'm like,
the
oh, that's why.
the built-in drop set.
Yeah, literally, like it's like a greased up drop set by accident. Like it's just yeah, it's everything's got its quirks. It's all got its things. It's like you learn the same thing with like treadmills. Not necessarily there, but you do there. But I like the gym I go to now. Each treadmill, the way the belt feels under your feet is different. So like
Yeah.
one machine almost has like a little bit of a stutter when you walk on it, and then there's others that are like super smooth, and then there's ones where like you can't really touch the digital part, like the big digital platform, because it's so creaky and loose that I feel like I'm gonna fucking rip it out of the machine. So I try to just touch the bar. But yeah, everything's got its little quirks and whatnot. So it's fun. It's fun to learn that. And like I said before, like it took me like a solid like 2 to 3 weeks or even a month to really understand
Oh
like
yeah. I
everything
mean,
that they got there.
I still don't know. Like yesterday I did like walk around like for a lot of it, like because I was trying to show my girlfriend like what's there, and I
Yeah.
still don't know a lot of what was there. Like I walked by like this one machine, I was like, honestly, don't even know what that is. We'll find out later.
There is one that's I've seen at another gym. Actually had, not that it was at Vanarchy, it was at Crush the Coliseum. I actually had to ask the front desk guy. I was like, "What is that?" Like I tried. There's no diagram, like nothing. There's like a pad here and a pad here, right? And then there's like a chair down here. So I'm sitting in front of it and I'm like, "Is it like a curl?" And I try to curl with like my wrists, and it just goes straight up. And I'm like, "Okay, that's not it." So I'm like trying to do like a forearm thing. I'm like, nope, that's not it. And then it's also throwing me off because right in front of you, there's like a fisheye mirror. You can see yourself. It's a mirror. Like it's not like an accident. It's purposely there. It's built into the machine, and it's a mirror. And I'm like, why is there a mirror on this machine? I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? So I ask him, and you put your arms in it like this, and you do
So it's
fucking
a shrug.
shoulder shrugs. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just like, what the fuck is, yeah. So like that's some of the equipment there. You got to try the super leg press. I think it's the green pin machine. That one's fun, or a super hack squat or something like that. I forget what it's called. And there's also the Eagle leg press. I think it's called the Eagle leg press. It's Cybex. That one's really fun to
Yeah.
use as well. So you got to check out both of those leg press equipment there. And then obviously the kneeling leg curl. I go to one of the gym I go to location wise for my ham day is simply because they have a kneeling leg curl machine. I love kneeling leg curls. So you got to use that kneeling leg curl. It's the same one that I
Yeah.
have at my gym here. You got to use it. It's so good. Such a good ham pump.
Well, Empire had one of these and I never used it, but Van has one, so I decided yesterday to do it. I want to say it's called like a swing squat or something like that, where you
Pendulum.
load your pendulum. There we go. And
Yeah.
I like just to test. I was like, all right, we're gonna do no weight. Never done this before. And in my
Mm,
fourth or fifth rep, I mean, granted, I'm super weak in my legs right now because I'm been injured
yeah.
all for I don't know the past 4 or 5 months. But I looked at my girlfriend. I was like, "Help!
Yeah.
I I'm dying."
Yeah.
And so
It humbles
it's
you.
intense. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
It
think
really does humble you.
I only like top set loaded like 50 pounds onto it, like
Hmm.
max, like at 25 each side. But it was just like, wow, this is insane. And
Yeah.
then of course I hunted for it and I found the hydraulic one just because it's just so goofy. I like it. The pressure gauge is stuck though. It's stuck in like the
Yeah.
hard position. You can't move it from medium or low. Um, and it's not that hard, but it's a good like rep out at the end of the workout, like burnout whatever's left.
Yeah.
But I put my legs on the incline platform that was there, like instead of doing a flat one, and it like torched my calves because of the angle. Because the pendulum, swings with you, but this is coming straight down, and if your
Uh huh.
legs are pointed out like that, it's like tearing the muscles fibers of your calves.
There's a machine at the I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, it's I think if
It,
that was
it's
closer to what's that?
it's I was gonna say it's almost like a calf raise if you do it like that.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, and I think if they put it closer to the leg work pieces throughout the gym, I think it would be better for like you said, like a burnout at the end. But it's kind of far away from a lot of the like equipment. And the last time I used it, it was like kind of
It's
out of the way.
it's hidden
Um,
in the very back room, the one that has the cable preacher curl. That's where
yeah,
it's hidden now.
yeah, it's kind of far away from all the leg equipment, so it's hard to like walk over there and start doing it. But the gym I go to has a plate loaded version of that machine, which I've
Interesting.
used before, and I've used even like so. There's a few different versions of that machine where like I used one down in Florida when I was visiting there in June, and that was interesting because the way it was built, it was like a very small platform. So when I stacked all the plates on there, I actually filled out the bar. I couldn't put any more on there. It's like fuck it, I'll just do the best I can. And I was shaking the whole machine. I thought it was going to tip over because the platform on the bottom was so narrow. Like I
Yeah,
legit was shaking the machine. And then the one at the gym I go to now has way bigger bars and is like chain driven rather than like a is almost like a pendulum. So like at the one I go to now, it's like it's on a it's on the same like pivot, right? It's got the same fulcrum to it, but
yeah,
the weight is instead of it being on my shoulders, basically where it was in Florida, it's like down below, and the chain is attached to the like top of the machine up here. So the weight is like down, way down in front of you and moving up and down as you squat. So that's pretty intense when you can actually like put a good amount of weight on a machine like that. It's pretty intense to experience, especially when you're doing the because I did the incline that you're talking about, and I did it quad focus, so I had my feet close together, and I was doing that, and you're just like getting crushed by the machine, and then you just blast
yeah,
right out of it. It's such a weird feeling
yeah,
because you're literally like folding in half, but then your quads just drive you right out. So
yep.
yeah, it's a good one. It's a good one.
And then I will say, and Van would like when he was showing me around, he like brought me here first. I could tell he was like super excited about it. It was
Oh yeah.
it's a lower no, not that one. It's a different piece of equipment. A
No,
lower ab.
he's excited in general. He's just always got a
Oh
smile
yeah,
on his face. Yeah.
yeah. It's a lower ab. Um, so you seatbelt your quads in, and you're seated in a already crunched over position, and you lift your legs. And it's an ab, like a think of like a seated reverse ab crunch, if that makes sense. So an ab crunch machine, you curl down,
Yeah.
right? This
Yeah.
one, your top stays locked and your legs are what come up.
Oh, interesting. That sounds
And
fun.
so yeah, and he was like dorking out, like showing me it, and I was like, this is so cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. He's always like that's I think what his favorite thing is. It's like these collect these pieces. Like he didn't need that lying leg curl, but like he wanted
Yeah,
it because it's hard to find. You know, like he's borderline a collector, honestly. And he's like
yeah,
it's almost like in a way it's kind of like his gym is like a
museum.
yeah, like a fitness equipment museum that you could like use. Like that's what it's like there. And it's just really fun because there's just so much equipment there that you'll never see anywhere else. It's
And
sick.
it's he has so many mirrors, which is also really nice. And like I'm
Yeah.
finding throughout the gym different spots where the lighting is just absurd. Like it the
Hmm.
weirdest spot is looking through if you have the bathroom door open and you can see into the bathroom and have the mirror
Hmm.
facing back out at you in the uh lying leg curl and seated it's like the little leg room right there. The one overhead light if you're facing it is just phenomenal warm lighting.
Yeah. It's crazy how much the gym has changed since I started going there. So when I started going there, the back room with the other mirrors and the good lighting over there, that wasn't there when I started there. So that's new ish, not anymore. But when I started going there, that wasn't there. When you to go left right after the desk, that wasn't there. That whole section wasn't there. The women's bathroom, which I think is to the right you walk in, that was the men's bathroom. The men's bathroom now was the women's bathroom and locker room. And then a lot of the equipment that you'd find that's like super grungy, like extra grungy, like the leg curl that has like the pad with like the little black bar that comes over it. They used to have
Yeah.
this hack squat, like they had all this different stuff, was down in the basement which you go like past the mag grip attachment board. You take the left there and you go down the stairs. That's where all the other stuff was. And the ceiling was so low, like this building's so old, the ceiling was like only like 7 feet tall. So like the ceiling's not much higher than like the average person, right? And they actually, I think at one point, so we would go down there for like hack squats and shit. There was some random equipment down there, but I think we had to stop going down there because there's mold or something like that. Like it was like some sort of health concern or some shit. So they had to start moving the
Yeah.
equipment up, and people stopped going down there because you can't go down there anymore. But like that was down there, so like the whole gym was so incredibly different than what it is now, and like all the spray paint stuff, all that like the Vanarchy gym, whatever on the wall, that wasn't there. Like there's so much less equipment when I started going there. It's crazy to see how far it's come, and like that side room, that back room that we mentioned, that originally the idea of that was supposed to be a calisthenics room. So they had like a rock wall, they had a bunch of ropes and like monkey bars and shit like that in there, and like a couple pieces of equipment that are kind of tucked away, like not really intruding on that. But then like I think people just weren't really using it that in the way that Van intended. So then he just kind of turned it into like an equipment room to like have like more space for that. And then
Yeah.
like for years they were building out that back room with the kitchen and shit. And now they have like the kitchen you can use now, like the microwave and all of that. They didn't have that when I started going there. So like that was exciting because he like announced it like a year after I started going there, like, oh, we bought the other side. So we're gonna build it all out. It took a while, which is understandable. It's not like he's got a big team. It's like him and like a couple other people, really. But um, yeah, it's excited to see how far he's come and how much people have changed in general. Like I always knew Van is if I saw his Hummer there, I knew he was there, but he doesn't drive the Hummer anymore. It's had so many issues, he just doesn't drive it anymore. But yeah, it's wild. It's come such a long way. It's great to see. He really deserves it.
Yeah. And I
But
mean, it's like I thought Empire was like a professional legit gym for like, the bodybuilding scene, but this is like the absolute like epitome of like because you're in there, it's it I know it's not actually dirty, but I like in my mind compared to the other ones, I consider it. And it's not dirty like in the sense of, germs or whatever, but it's like it's a dank place and it's like you're in there for like one reason, it's to work out. You're not there as an influencer, you're not in there for fucking anything. You're just fucking doing your shit and getting out. Like and that's what I want.
yeah,
Like it's perfect.
it's the atmosphere. Like you said, it's not that it's dirty. It's not. It's the atmosphere.
Yeah.
And even when I first started going there, you'll notice it now that I mention it. The floor is all black foam pads, right? Everything's black foam pads, like you almost like a dojo or something, right? Like you like
In
interlock
the
them, kind of
center
like
area.
Legos. Yeah,
In the
most
center
of it, a
area.
lot of
The
it is.
the
Yeah,
the
not
side is like
everywhere, but
it's like carpeted office space.
yeah. So when I first started going there, everything was like that. It was all like red carpet and like duct taped everywhere that it's ripped and whatnot. Like it was so grungy. Like it was nowhere near what it is now. And COVID really made them crack down on being clean and all that shit and like vacuuming and whatnot. So like that even took them to the next level being clean. So it was like it was so different when I started going there.
Yeah.
And they had to crack down during COVID on like lifting without a shirt and shit like that because I think the CDC, like some sort of like rep or something, was like on their ass constantly during COVID. In Massachusetts, I think they were like that with a lot of gyms, but like they were like, yeah, like I posted a video. It was in like December. I was somehow sweating. I don't know how the hell I was sweating, but I posted a video of me training without a shirt on. I was doing the machine incline press, which is such a good machine. You got to use that machine in the corner by the dumbbells. You got to use that incline press plate loaded machine. It's so good.
Oh yeah.
But I
Oh
was
yeah.
using that, and um, they're like, "Yeah, we can't have you doing that anymore because the CDC's cracking down and all that, and like we can't have any sort of remote contamination." Granted, this was like it was kind of peak COVID. It was like December 2020, so like that's
Yeah.
understandable. But like, yeah, it was a completely different place when I first started going there versus now, which it's changed, I think, for the better. But what's great is that there's also been extremely loyal people. You know, there's guys I've talked to there that have been going there since it was called Worlds. Uh, Van, I think, worked there when it was called Worlds Gym, and then he bought it and turned it into Vanarchy. I think there's some sort of like copyright issue or something with the name when he like bought it and kept it as Worlds. but he turned it into Vanarchy, and like people have been going there since it was Worlds even. So like
Yeah.
it's the loyalty there is great. It's just I wish I could just pick it up and bring it down here, but I just can't. It's just every time I go there though, I'm like, yeah, it's just a gym, it's just whatever. But then I go there, I'm like, fuck, this gym's good. Like I miss it so much, you know.
And you
But
can lift without a shirt again. That's
yeah,
possible again. Like it's
yeah,
I I'm one of the most clothed people there, and I'm wearing like I have my different like muscle cut t-shirts, but also like my I cut like into the sides of my shirt so I have breathability down like my the whole core basically.
yeah.
And even that I'm one of the most clothed people there.
Yeah, I mean it's better now, but they had to crack down for a while. I did some posing without a shirt on. They didn't say anything, so I was like, all right, I figured it'd be fine. So
I think
yeah,
it's
I just
also
miss
the
it though.
time of day because like my I've
Yeah.
done 3 workouts there so far, 2 of which have been at 9 p.m. And I mean, there's
Yeah.
already not a lot of people that go there, which is also what I love, but 9 p.m. there was me and 2 other people in the gym. Like and
Hmm.
that's beautiful. Like
Yeah,
and
that's when I went when they told me that I had to wear a shirt because I posted it to my Instagram and
yeah.
I was talking about how like I missed it and I love this machine, whatever. And they told me that I had to put a shirt on, and I was training at like that time. Like I honestly think it was like 10:30. I think it was the only one in the gym, but it was like
Yeah.
it wasn't that I was that like they weren't cool with it. It was just that like if they were caught with something like that going on, then they would get fined and shit like that. So like I understand, I respect them enough to like not disrespect them in that way. So like I had no problem wearing clothes and whatnot. Um, but one thing you're going to experience you haven't yet. It's not so bad now. The lack of AC is cool. It's sick there. It doesn't get. I mean, obviously, like you're not used to down here, but to me, it doesn't get too hot up there. So I was pretty comfortable training there. It can get pretty warm in there, but then during the winter, they only got like space heaters, so it gets cold as shit in the winter there. Like, most days I train there, it was like sweatshirt, sweatpants until
I
like
mean,
towards the end when I'm like drenched, and then that's when I take my shit off and finish up, and then I put my sweatshirt and sweatpants back on. It gets
I love
cold.
the cold, so doesn't bother me.
Yeah, I'm the opposite. I can't stand it. So like I can't. And the problem is like I love training where it's hot and I'm just drenched in sweat. Um, and I think it just helps with my blood flow. Honestly, like I think I get a better pump when it's hot. I could be
Yeah.
wrong, but I feel like if I've been definitely if you've been in the sun, that's why I like to go. I've been doing a lot of tanning lately, and I like to go tanning before I hit the gym because it opens up my pores. It makes my skin feel good, and I think it honestly helps with my blood flow because I come out of that I think more vascular than I did going in. Every time I've gone tanning, I've experienced that. So I like the heat, and I did. Speaking of sweat, actually, I did message my coach and was like, "Hey, so since I supposedly took Tren, I feel like I've been sweating a lot more ever since I pinned it the first time." And he's like, "Yeah, Tren supposedly changes your body like crazy, like permanently, basically. Like your body changes
Yeah.
permanently the second you start taking it." And I guess that's just what it changed about me is that like now I sweat like a motherfucker no matter how much I train. Like I'll be like a couple movements in and I'm like dripping. And like I almost have to be like careful of it. Like if I'm spotting someone, I have to like lean a little bit back so that because I can't feel it on my
You
chin because of
start
my facial
dripping on
hair.
them.
Yeah, I don't want to drip on their face. So I'm like spotting them like a fucking chicken or some shit. And I'm like, I'll help you. And like it's like dripping on my shirt. But yeah, it's like I don't realize how sweaty I get until I take off my shirt. And I'm like, okay, I'm pretty sweaty, but then I like grab my shirt and I'm like, ugh. It's like it's just damp. It's like soaked and like fucking. I could like wring it out. I'm like, jet damn.
Yep.
So it gets rough sometimes, but yeah, I love the heat. Um, speaking of that, um, transition of the century, Ibutamoren MK677.
Well, yeah. So
So
this is the conversation we'll be doing for the rest of the episode today, and where it kind of
yeah,
comes from. If you don't
we kind
recognize
of
what, yeah, if you don't recognize the code word that Paul just said,
yeah.
that's a SARM, and there's like, I mean, when you're natural, you use whatever natural supplements you want to use, but you will lose your natty card if take SARMs, and we're going to be talking about SARMs because it's been in my mind for a while. I think Paul and I talked about it first for me. I mean, just as an idea, probably like 6 months ago, something like that.
Yeah,
Um, and
a while ago.
that's part of it as well. Like, well, we're going to be talking about this kind of stuff. You can just buy like as whenever you want. It's not like the alleged stuff that Paul allegedly takes. Like this stuff you can just order on the internet and get it, next day if you do fast shipping. Like it is readily available. So the
Hmm.
primary thing to note is that neither of us are doctors, neither of us are professionals
Correct.
in the field. Anything that we say here is purely for research purposes, and what you do with this information is purely up to you. We have no connection or motivation in telling you this information. And
Yes, I
basically,
want to add.
yeah,
I also want to add that a lot of what we talk about too here, a lot of the information there's when it comes to, so a couple things I want to preface a lot of this by. To me, arguably, most SARMs I would still consider you natural after taking it, especially if it does alter your testosterone permanently. Some do. So there's a couple I wouldn't consider you 100% natural afterwards. Something like MK677, which we will talk about, I would consider you natural afterwards, just because it doesn't. It's technically not a SARM, essentially. So like the actual definition of a SARM is technically not a SARM. Ibutamoren or MK677, LUM201, whatever you want to call it. MK677 or ibutamoren are the main ways to call it, at least here in the US. I don't know what it's called anywhere else. And I don't know the availability of these peptides elsewhere. In the US, we have generally much more lax laws about stuff like this. Not in comparison to other countries, something like Mexico, South America. A lot of those countries have full legality when it comes to even anabolic steroids. With most countries that are based in North America, not in Latin America. So, like I'm talking about, like the U.S. and Canada, and a lot of EU countries, they crack down harder on under the table supplements like this. The way it works in the US, it's a gray area. And the gray area is that you can buy these from what is called essentially for research purposes. So when you buy them from a company that sells stuff like this, peptides, SARMs, whatever you want to call it, you buy it under the umbrella of I'm buying this for research purposes. That's how you can get past the legal barrier. In the EU, other countries, I don't know how it works. I can't say that you can necessarily buy this stuff. Recently, I did buy some peptides for my PCT, not SARMs, but they're peptides, and I was able to buy them under the guise of research purposes. So we want to
yeah,
preface that, as well as a lot of the information we present today that we've read about. There have been some studies. One, a lot of these studies have very small sample sizes. They're not really something you should really judge off the greater population of how people will react to it, as well as a lot of stuff that we read about as well is also anecdotal. I'm in a couple of different forums online for anabolics, so I read a lot about how other people react to it. Granted, I personally trust those anecdotal responses more because the number of anecdotal responses I can gather through these forums is usually more than these sample sizes of these studies are actually. So, for instance, one of the sample sizes I read about was 24 overall people, 12 on the actual SARM, 12 people on the placebo. Where in the forum, I could read more than 24 people who've taken it and have told their experience with it. So that's why I
yeah,
trust that in a sense more than the studies. So I do want to preface all of that there. So don't necessarily take what we say as fact, simply just stating this is what we've read, this is what we've seen. This is, in this case, it's not about experience because I don't really have experience with too much SARMs. This is more about what we've read. And then also the problem with SARMs too is that a lot of this is very new to the market. I really think MK677 came around like 2017. I'm pretty sure it
yeah,
was invented in 2017. It's very new. So in the grand scheme of things, like a lot of the anabolic steroids people take, besides like Tren, have been around since like the 60s and 70s. So like the side effect profile, there's been way more studies done. there's way more understanding of what this does. And also on top of that, thousands of people have used steroids over the years. SARMs is extremely new to the market. So a lot of this stuff is we don't really know the long-term effects. And I think that's kind of what a lot of the conversation is going to be about today. And MK677, ibutamoren, whatever you want to call it, INN, is just one of those. So go ahead and talk about your idea of what we were talking about the other day, of what you might be doing.
Yeah. And then just before I get into my stuff, another thing to note too is that while like Paul mentioned that he would still consider you natural, based on what you're taking, like dependent on what like compounds you take for the SARM world. The important thing to note is that any of them does break, like if you are a collegiate athlete, amateur athlete, or professional athlete, all of these do get flagged when you do uh
Interesting.
your tests. So I that's what I was looking into as well. Not that I'm in any sports world, but
Mm-hmm.
if you take like again, this information is not being presented for you to utilize for your own research purposes, but if you do your own research purposes with these, please keep in mind that they do get flagged and you do kind of break the testing laws if you do
What did
that.
it say when it got flagged? What did it come up as?
Hold on, I have it.
I'm
Maybe I don't have it
curious.
here.
I mean,
Let me.
it's probably like a false positive, kind of like it might, kind of like how if you eat a lot of poppy seeds, it comes up as opiates, I think. So that's just a false positive.
Well,
Much,
so the big one that is the Lance Armstrong was taking. Lance Armstrong was on. Which one was it?
he was on
Um,
oh my gosh, it increases. I don't think it was a SARM. The
he,
one
he
that
was
really
he was on
he
a
was probably
SARM though. That's
yeah, there were the one that he really got caught for was to increase his red blood cell count, which was I always forget the name of it. It's never used in bodybuilding, that's why I forget about it. I didn't yeah, it's EPO, that's right.
yeah.
Erythropoietin. Yeah, EPO, whatever you want to call it. That's right. I didn't research this beforehand. I completely forgot. I didn't even think about this, but yeah, EPO, that just increases your red blood cell count and helps a lot with endurance. But what SARMs did he supposedly take? Did it say?
Um, I don't have. I'm on a different browser right now, so I don't have the information that I was looking at the other day. But it he was. I mean, obviously, there's a lot. He had a large profile of stuff that he was caught
Yeah, actually,
taking.
now that I'm reading about it, holy
Um,
shit. Yeah, you're not kidding.
yeah,
He was taking
he
GH too. What the fuck?
yeah he had a very large profile, but there was a SARM in there as well.
Okay,
Or
interesting.
multiple, but yeah. So we should also say a SARM when we say that is a selective androgen receptor modulator.
Hmm.
And essentially what that's saying is that when you take your androgen and it, Paul, you're better at explaining the science stuff. I can say it in bro science, but you can say it in science talk.
Yeah, so there's when we say SARM, it's kind of a wide umbrella. MK677, I wouldn't necessarily call a SARM, just
Yeah.
because it doesn't bind to your androgen receptors. So your androgen receptors is essentially what helps actually grow your muscles. It's that's why it's called anabolics. It's called your androgen receptors, SARM. It's all this stuff is kind of interlinked, which Blade Runner reference there, interlinked. So everything's interlinked. And the way it works essentially is when it comes to steroids too, each SARM does something different and it targets different things in a different way. The way MK677 targets your body, this so SARMs was developed from what I've read. I don't know if this is the truth for all of them, but a lot of them was actually developed for performance enhancement, or typically for human performance enhancement. A lot of steroids was created for other animals like cattle, horses, stuff like that. Tren was created for cattle, from my understanding, to increase their lean muscle mass so that you can get more meat out of them. So the idea behind SARMs was like, hey, let's create something that's ideally similar results to steroids, but less side effects, less dangerous to the body. And you know, it kind of bridges the gap between natural and not natural. So that's why I say I wouldn't, in this case of MK677, I would consider you natural still, because it's not affecting your testosterone necessarily. What MK677 does is it's technically a growth hormone secretagogue. And what that does is it, for a short period of time, over the span of roughly 24 hours, it increases your IGF-1, which is insulin-like growth factor. Insulin-like growth factor is essentially what comes from the production of growth hormone. And to even broaden the horizons there, what growth hormone does, you naturally create growth hormone just like you naturally create testosterone and all of that. What growth hormone does is different to what androgen receptors do, and to different to what hypertrophy is. So the understanding of what hypertrophy is usually backwards from what most people think. People think that hypertrophy is typically the building of muscle mass. Technically, they're not necessarily wrong. It increases the overall size, so therefore you think you're building muscle. Really, what you're actually doing with hypertrophy is you're actually increasing the size of your muscle cells. Your muscle cells are getting stronger, they're getting bigger, and able to withstand more pressure, more stimuli, and to undergo. There's a word for it. I don't know why I'm thinking. I'm drawing a blank on it. When you're in the gym training, you're damaging. You're stressing your body. There you go. Stress. You're increasing your muscle cellular size in order to withstand more stress. What growth hormone does is it actually increases your overall muscle cellular count. So that's why when we talk about growth hormone, which I have no idea when, it's a chance I'm going to take it down the road. I've taken it in the past. I took a bad set of it, unfortunately. But what growth hormone does, when you typically take growth hormone, you take it for 6 months, which is it sounds like a longer time for a cycle. It's not, because your body doesn't actually, when it comes to growth hormone specifically, your body doesn't actually metabolize it and actually utilize it for almost 6 months. So like, let's say you start taking it January 1st. You're not really going to see the effects of it until like July.
Yeah.
But you take it for 6 months straight, and then you taper off it. And then from July, hypothetically from July to December, you should blow up like a motherfucker, because your body's now finally utilizing that HGH that you took the first half of the year. So that's what GH essentially does. What IGF-1 is essentially the result of growth hormone production, insulin-like growth factor. And essentially, insulin-like growth factor is going to have an effect on your lean muscle mass. It's going to have an effect on your sleep architecture as well, the way you sleep at night, the way your body recovers, stuff like that. So when you take something like MK677, the idea is that you grow muscle mass, actual muscular cells, with as little amount of body fat growth as possible, or visceral fat, total fat mass. You want to keep that down, and it supposedly actually increases your REM sleep, because you're increasing your IGF-1 temporarily. So it's actually going to increase your actual REM sleep. The studies that have been done, one study that was done was a small study in 14 people, with 25 milligrams per day at bedtime. They were shown to increase their REM sleep by 20 to 50%. 20% in younger subjects and 50% in older subjects, respectively. So it had an increase in REM sleep from what they could tell off 14 people. If you've ever taken a statistics class, 14 is not a big enough sample size. It's not.
Correct.
We don't know really what's going to actually happen. So with that being said, the idea behind MK677 is to increase your IGF-1 essentially. But because of that, the reason I think MK677, from what I've read anecdotally from other people and in studies, is that it fucks your insulin sensitivity. So what it's really, at the end of the day, is going to end up doing, from what I've read, is that it makes you hungry as fuck and want to eat everything in sight. And therefore you put on a lot of lean mass because you're eating a lot of food. So therefore you can train hard, you get a lot of energy, but then you put on a lot of fat and a lot of water because you're eating a lot of food. So there's pros and cons to everything. And that's, from what I've read, MK677 hypothetically could do to you. Whether or not that happens to everybody, I'm not sure. A lot of people say that, they didn't really gain much fat at all and it was great, blah, blah, blah. But from what I've read in the forums that I've been in, that I'm in, essentially, that's what people have said. So that's kind of my opinion on MK677. But at the end of the
Yeah.
day, I don't necessarily consider you unnatural afterwards because it's a growth hormone secretagogue. It's not technically like a SARM, in my opinion.
Yeah,
So,
and, the reason why Paul and I are talking about MK77 so much right now is that, earlier this week when I told Paul that, I'm going to be taking stuff, allegedly, well, I don't even have to say allegedly because it's research purposes, when I told Paul that I would be like, I talked it over with my close circle, and I would be, taking going on something, that was the one that I led with. I led with MK77. So the reason why that's the one in particular that we're mentioning right now, it's just because it was the one that I had mentioned him. But there are a lot of different options. There are a ton of different ones.
mm-hmm.
There's always going to be a I'm going to call it a science math word. If you hear like when we say MK77, that's the little science math
It's
word. Um,
MK677.
Oh, sorry, yes. But, uh,
Yeah.
then there's also the word that is not using numbers. Ibutamorin is what, uh, that would be if you don't use the numbers. And then, there's a whole bunch of different ones that are also on the table that if you go to any, website that, sells these kind of things, and again, always listed for research purposes, there's gonna be tons of different ones that you can look at, and all of them will have and when I say the math science word, that's their compound name. So like if you were looking
Mm-hmm.
at it under a microscope and you see the how it's like built and everything, that's the scientific compound name for whatever you are looking at. And then the other one is like a lot of the time the other name is just like either who discovered it and who made it. Like
Yeah.
Ligandrol is sorry, LG4033 and Ligand, it's just called Ligandrol because it was a guy named Ligand who found it, or his name is something along the lines of it. And so a
It's
lot of the
Ligand
times
Pharmaceuticals, I
that
guess,
that one
is who created
exactly.
it. Yeah.
And so my point being is that the I'm going to call it the easy to pronounce name. They're not all easy to pronounce, but in comparison to a compound name, they're absolutely easy to pronounce. And that's just based literally on either who makes it or who found it first.
Yeah.
So we're starting with MK677 just because that was the first one that I posed to him. Before we started recording today, I did mention how Ligandrol is another one that I'm taking a look at as well. But basically, the idea is that I'm going to, and the whole premise behind this is that for research purposes, I'm going to hop on one or two as a starter, and I'm leaning more towards one just because this is my first time I'll put my body through anything like this. But if it's two, that's fine by me too. And then do it for a period of 60 days. Uh, and it is important to note that when you take a SARM, you still want to do a PCT afterwards. And how intense that PCT is literally just dependent on what your test levels look like after you're done taking it. The blood work if you want to do that as well. Like Paul was mentioning with the MK677, insulin levels could take a hit. So the severity of your PCD is literally just based on what it looks like. There are some cases that I've read into where you don't even need to PCT just based on how their bodies reacted. But again, that's on a very individual anecdotal basis. This is very, very new stuff. There is not a whole lot of information out there that, or not a whole lot of prolonged research put into it. There is information, but it's not, prolonged research.
Yeah.
So everything's taken with a grain of salt. So I plan to do a PCT regardless of what my levels look like, just because I want to get my body back to, a good state without being on anything. But we're going to do it for a period of 60 days. And then PCT for, I, I mean, again, PCTing is dependent, but I plan to do it for at least, 3, 4 weeks, something like that. And then, yeah, so throughout that process, I'm also going to be taking a page out of Rich Piana's book. I'm going to do He did a road to 30 pounds of muscle mass where he recorded literally everything that went down in his day, from like what he ate, how long he slept, what he trained that day. And so, since it's, again, like we mentioned, for research purposes, this is going to be my research, quote unquote, and just provide you guys with all that information. Because, like Paul was saying, he's in different groups, forums that give information, and a lot of it is leaning against using this stuff. And so, this will
Mhm.
just be another bro science anecdotal research added to the mix. You guys won't be able to get, official research stuff because it just hasn't been around long enough. Um, and to note as well, Paul and I don't like these people, but it's not FDA approved. But at the same time, we don't trust FDA in general. So take that with a grain of salt as well. But probably going to be doing that either this upcoming week or the week following, and just starting 60 days from there.
Yeah. So uh, when it comes to SARMs, you can find studies out there, the beneficial studies, but the long term side effects, the long running issues that we could potentially face with these is we don't know. It's kind of like this is weird to compare it, but it's kind of like vaping originally. We don't really know the long term effects of vaping. Really, we know the short term. Popcorn lung, not really like a thing. It's just like, is this really actually bad for us if there's no nicotine in it? Stuff like that is kind of what was posed with vaping. With SARMs, it's like, does this really actually affect our long term, longevity, stuff like that? We know the effects of steroids. It's been around long enough. Testosterone, D-ball, DECA, stuff like that. That's been around for forever. Um, so essentially, with SARMs, the problem with SARMs is that we don't know really what could happen. There
Yeah,
have been, and the problem with SARMs too, with steroids, there's, like I said earlier, there's built out side effect profiles. We know that there could be these issues with each thing, and with SARMs, it's almost like every single person experiences something different. So it's hard to say, like, when so let's say I'm talking to someone in the gym, they're like, oh, I'm experiencing hair loss or something, and they tell me, oh, I'm on Masteron test in Aromasin. I'd probably say, okay, it's probably the Masteron, because the Masteron is a DHT. It's a DHT derivative. When you take more DHTs, it's actually the DHT is going to bind to your hair follicles essentially, and then what's going to happen is your hair is going to essentially start falling out. You can buy anti DHT shampoo and stuff like that to help fight it, and it actually helps a lot. But we know that something like a DHT, like Masteron, will hypothetically affect your hair growth. With something like SARMs, we don't necessarily know that, just because it's not a DHT derivative. It's not a testosterone derivative. It's not a alpha 9 nor. It's nothing like that. They're a completely separate ball game. So with the forums I'm in, I did find a actually really good response from someone that actually simplified it a lot for me. So this guy, I literally just found it. I've been searching a couple forums for a while over the past few days, trying to find as much information as I can from anecdotal stuff. And when it comes to SARMs, MK677, all that I was finding was really negative, honestly. That's why, like, I'm someone who thinks that personally, what you want to do with your body, stuff, and anybody else is completely up to you. Personally, I feel that if SARMs is in the conversation, you should either never touch it or just move to anabolics. That's my opinion, because with anabolics, you truly get actual really good results. Granted, you're no longer natural. No matter what anabolic steroid you take, you're no longer natural. Even if you just take DH, I argue you're no longer natural. But
yeah,
uh, with something like steroids, we know the side effect profile. Typically, you can manage the side effects very, very well. Um, and we also know the results you can get from steroids. So you get typically really good results. With something like SARMs, the results are up in the air and the side effects are up in the air. So that's why I'm like, if you're going to do it, I would say go the full way. But I also think that people shouldn't really touch steroids in the first place on their very certain circumstances. With that being said, there's just one response from this guy who kind of dumbed down SARMs in a very simple way. In the past, I have taken SARMs. I regret it just because I didn't know
This
what I
is
was
this is
doing. I didn't
a
understand.
this is the review or you?
This is me. Sorry, I should have
Okay,
clarified that.
okay.
I have
Yeah.
taken SARMs in the past, so I know a couple of them. I've taken ligandrol in the past, and I've taken Ostrin. Ligandrol is LGD 5066, as well as Ostrin is MK2886. So I also take Cardarin, which people say is a SARM. I wouldn't necessarily say is a SARM. Which Cardarin is was also developed by Ligand Pharmaceuticals as well as GlaxoSmithKline in the 1990s. So, like Cardarin's been around for a while. I don't see it as a SARM. I can go to a store and buy it. Granted, it's kind of an underground store. They're not like a GNC or something like that. They're not selling illegal shit. They just sell it under the guise of research. But Cardarin, really all it does is actually just helps your body utilize protein essentially as an energy source. So it just, for me, I can just work out way harder and longer than without it. So that's why I like it. It doesn't actually affect your gains or anything like that. It just gives you more energy in the gym. You have more stamina. So with that being said, this guy on this forum said, Ostrin, this is all dumbed down. This is all just as a comparison. If you know steroids, you'll know the response to this. So basically, Ostrin, it's one of the most mild SARMs, comparable to Anavar, but much milder than Anavar, almost purely tissue selective. So Ostrin is like really the thing with Ostrin is almost like you only really see results in your traps and your delts because that's where most of your androgen receptors are. A very big portion of them, no matter who you are, is going to be in your traps and in your delts. That's why when you start taking tests and stuff like that, that improves your androgen receptors, your delts start to blow the fuck up. It's just what happens. Um, with that being said, there's also S4, which is similar to Winstrol but milder. Winstrol is a cutting agent, helps you maintain muscle while you're cutting. LGD 5066, which is ligandrol. It's similar to D-ball. Women report it well because it's got low viralization. So it's going to help with mass building, maybe some fat and water gaining. MK677, which is ibutamoren. It's a very strong oral GH secretagogue. This is what this guy is saying. So this is what he's saying. It's just comparison. It has a super
Yep.
long half-life, about 4 to 6 hours, which is long for IGF-1, similar to peptides, but more side effects. So he's saying it's similar to other peptides, which is other SARMs, like LGD, but you're going to have a lot more side effects with something like ibutamoren. Rad 140, it's similar to testosterone essentially, but it can shut you down. Also with Rad 140 is that a lot of guys have experienced a lot of hair loss. And they've also experienced their testosterone shutting down completely, basically, afterwards. It fucks up with your testosterone. So Rad 140 is one of those that I would consider you not natural after that. I also wouldn't consider you natural after arguably Ostrin, just because I know when I took Ostrin, my test kind of shut down afterwards as well. So Ostrin, that's kind of a hard one there. S23 is a harder version of S4, so similar to Winstrol. It's going to shut you down afterwards, from what this guy's read about. And YK11 supposedly works as a myostatin inhibitor, which is just going to help overall. Just if you have a myostatin deficiency, you're going to build a lot of muscle. That's why kids who have a myostatin deficiency, they don't live long lives, unfortunately, but they're super muscular kids. So what myostatin does, if it's an inhibitor, it's just going to help overall muscle growth. So that's what YK11 is going to do. Cardarin, he did mention Cardarin. It's not really considered a SARM, but it's considered a bit anabolic. It's a metabolic activator, really, metabolic activator. So it helps with metabolism, lowers bad health markers. It does help actually a lot with, that's a good mention. It does help a lot with your cholesterol. So it helps a lot with my LDL and HDL lipids. So there is that. But with that being said, I think in your case, Stoff, I think if you were to use one hypothetically, ligandrol is probably the smartest one, just because it's it's got good results, especially compared to Brad 140. It from my remembrance of it, I think I built a little bit off of it. Put on a little bit of weight, not much, but I did build some muscle, I believe, when I was taking it. So that's, I think, going to be your best bet. But again, it's completely up to you, and what you end up doing is up to you. Um, we can obviously we'll talk about it more throughout the week, but I think that your best bet most likely is LGD. And then when it comes to like in quotations like a post psychotherapy, really I think just kind of tapering off it is really all you need to do, because it shouldn't really affect your hormones or anything like that. It shouldn't really affect your lipid profile too much. So I think like instead of taking other things along with it, really just kind of tapering off it and slowly just kind of weaning your body
Yeah,
off it, and then you'll be good.
there's the PCTs that I look at are all natural ones. So
Yeah.
like 5% nutrition does theirs is like blatant. They call it off what is it called? Off hold on.
Yeah, he has Rich Piana did help develop a lot of stuff for people on steroids. Like he has like a
Off
liver
gear.
supporter.
Off
Yeah, I'm
gear
not
is
surprised.
or post gear. That's as
Yeah.
blatant as it can be. And then there's another one called Rebirth PCT, which is another natural option for it. Both, relatively cost effective. It's literally what I'm paying for the SARM. So
Yeah.
that's just natural ways. That's basically just taking another natural supplement. So I'm going to do that anyways, just to give myself, you know, a complete clean through. Not that, like you said, if depending on what I take, it's not really that I need one. It's more so just as preventative care, just in case.
Yeah. I think like I said, I think just tapering off it, you'll be fine. Let's say like I don't really even remember fully what the dosages were. I think like Gandrol was like 1 milliliter or something prior to working out, like an hour before working out or something. Um, but yeah, I think just for you, I think it'd just be like 1 week you do like half a milliliter, and then like the next week you do like 0.25 milliliters or like a quarter of a milliliter for the
Yeah, you
second
just
week, and
wean
then you
off
should
of
be good
it.
to go after that. Yeah, like really only like a 2 week PCT is probably fine. Um, Honestly, that's my opinion. What you do with it's up to you. But like he has a 5% I like because he also has a liver and organ support that's supposed to help with taking anabolics, because a lot of it, especially if you're taking orals, is really hard on your liver and your kidneys and all of that. So um, that can help there. But yeah, they I love 5% Nutrition in general. It's one of my favorite supplement
Yeah,
companies.
we've dorked out about them in the past.
For sure, for sure. Um, but yeah, so I think when it comes to the SARMs in general, I think that from what I've read from my own experience kind of with it, I think that like Gandrol is probably going to be your best bet. And like I said, we'll talk about it more. I got some sources for you, like as far as like information and whatnot to show you afterwards. So we'll talk about it more. But
Yeah, right now
yeah,
the leaning right now is the first one being just like Androl. Like I said, since it's my first doing anything, I'm gonna keep it to. I preferably want to keep it to just one compound because I don't want to do a combination on just my first. I want to see how my body reacts to just taking something that it doesn't normally
yeah,
receive. And so I think like Androl is going to be the first. Just do that for 60 days. And I know for our listeners, when we've talked about cycles in the past, we talk about in weeks. The reason why I'm talking about in days is literally just because it's easier for me to track in days versus weeks, because it just
hmm
lines up a little bit easier for me. So that's the only reason I'm referring to it like that. If you want me to say it in weeks, 60 days would just be 4 or 5 weeks. So I can just say it like that. Or sorry, that's not right.
it's 8 weeks.
It'd be
60
eight.
days
Yeah,
would be
yeah. I
like
did.
eight
I did the
weeks
half. Yeah,
essentially.
yeah. I did half.
Yeah,
So if you want me to say it like that, it's 8 weeks, 9 weeks, something like that. But I just say it in days because it's easier for me to keep track of. So yeah, that'll be either this upcoming week or the week following, and then I might even publicize my TikTok. It's been on private just because I'm a teacher and I don't like have my students having access to that. But I might
hmm
publicize it just so that anybody who wants to see it can see my daily, research on this, just so I'm as transparent as possible. Because and that's also why we have these conversations here on the podcast. We always get really it's a one of our biggest pet peeves between the two of us when people try and hide information about whatever they're using, because the reason one of the big reasons why there's so little research is because people hide away their results and hide away their anecdotal data, and instead we counteract that by just being as transparent about everything. I mean, for the past couple months, as Paul went through his different shows, like, if you listen to those podcasts, you can figure out more or less exactly what he's doing. And that's the
Hmm.
transparency that we want to promote, because that way it's a lot safer too. It's so much safer when there's transparency about everything. Like Paul and I saying, we do not recommend this for anybody. This is just the two of us and our goals and our mentality surrounding it. So we are okay with it. We do not recommend it for other people. Certainly have long conversations with people you trust about this topic. Like Paul and I, like I said, I've been talking about this for damn near 6 months. So this is not a spur of the moment, like spontaneous thing. This is something that has been in conversation for a while. So if you are considering it, it needs to be something that you still will want to be thinking and talking about, half a year from now, because otherwise it's just a spontaneous decision and you're being, you know, a little bit rash and irresponsible. So at the end of the day, like we said, your own research best you can and long conversations with those who actually know what they're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. I like to be transparent with it. So I want to make sure that everybody knows kind of what's going on and whatnot. And I think it's better to be transparent than to hide it personally. I can't stand it when people lie about shit that they take because it can be harmful, mentally and physically to a lot of people. So something like SARMs is a bit safer, but also we don't really know if it's safer. So like that's why I say like take it with a grain of salt, just because we don't really know necessarily what is in SARMs and how it could affect us down the road. So um, yeah, steroids is a different ball game, and that's why they say SARMs is the bridge. They say it's the bridge between non-natural and natural. It's not as readily available as something like protein or creatine, or as studied as protein, creatine, glutamine, nothing like that.
I was gonna say
It's
it is just as available. It's just not as researched.
I mean, you can't like really go into a store and
I
buy
guess I was gonna say, I guess
typically.
based on where you're going, like if you know the stores, supplement stores that you ask for the right word or something like that, you can access it. I guess yeah, I understand what you mean by that. I think of it more like in the uh, hyper complex and efficiency based world we live in, where everybody just orders everything. That's where it's
Yeah,
just as available.
yeah, that's
But
fair.
yeah,
That's
if
fair.
you're
That's fair.
in a walk-in sense, you're right. It's the only chance you get of walking in and getting it is if you know where to go and what, like, it's not like they have to hide it necessarily, but it's still, everything is research based. Like, I know I can go to my previous coach and I could get it if I wanted to, but I'm gonna choose to order instead.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the store I go to, like, I think has like some like pill versions of SARMs and stuff like that. But I'm not sure the bioavailability of the pill versions versus the like liquid versions. That's something I'd have to look into more. So I can't say whether or not that's better or worse. I would imagine that the liquid version is easier to digest and has better bioavailability. Um, Also with SARMs, for those that are listening, you don't have to pin SARMs like you do steroids. You don't pin like Androl. You just essentially drink it.
You
It tastes like
you can
shit.
you can pin it.
Yeah, you'll probably fuck yourself up because a lot of the time they mix it with shit like vodka and stuff like that, like alcohol. Um, Depending on where you get it from. Typically, it's like some sort of like alcohol substance that they mix it with. But so like you could fuck up your system if you pin it. So if you just mix it with water or something like that, it's gonna taste like shit. Like I remember the last time I took Ostrin was like I did it straight once. Like at one point it just tasted weird, but then like the second time I got it, it was like straight acid. I was like, what the fuck was that? So
Yeah.
they kind of mix it with some. It's not like bad, it's not like they're mixing it with bad shit. It's just like this, as far as like so that it can bind to the actual SARM itself. The liquid can sometimes taste like shit. So you shouldn't pin it either. So, but yeah, you just drink it essentially, which is easier for a lot of people. than to pin
Yeah,
something.
and for anyone who knows my background in history, I will be buying through a place that uses an oil to bind it, not an alcohol agent to bind it. But there's another way to ingest it. Like obviously, we're talking about oral. They have their pill and powder versions, which in both have pros and cons. But from what my research has produced, powder is like the beta version of everything. Like you're not getting nearly as good of a product when you get the powder version. The pill version is dependent. It can be the same, but it can also be more harmful on like your liver and kidney. As but the liquid version that you can just ingest orally, um, there's another way to ingest it where you once you put it in your mouth, you keep it under your tongue for 3 seconds, and because of the pores that you have in your mouth, part of it gets ingested there, and then you swallow the rest of it. And again, that's bro science, but apparently has better results. It just keeps the shit tasting in your mouth
Hmm.
longer, so you have to be willing to deal with that. There's a fancy word for it, but I'm blanking on it right now.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything about that personally, but I mean, again, that's also like a lot of that's like bro science and shit like that. So who knows if that's really the truth? I just think that just getting in the full amount is really what's required. So if
Yep.
you like one way I did it was like I'd take like a mouthful of water, like squeeze the liquid into the dropper that it comes with, and then just swig more water with it so that I don't really taste it. So that's how I did it, and that way I knew I got the milliliter. If you mix it with the glass, sometimes it can kind of stick to the glass or whatever. Like if you might lose a little bit from that, so just be careful of that. But with that being said, I mean I think it is a lot easier to take something like that than it is to take like steroids or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. You don't have to worry
But
about buying, your pins or anything like that. You're just down the hatch, done. And there's different
yeah,
times to take it too. I'll be kind of explaining that in my series as I go through the process. Like, and when we were talking about MK677, the different things that I read, because it makes you so hungry, you take it like in the morning when you wake up before you eat. That's not going to be the case for all of them. So I'll kind of be explaining that as I go through my process.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, we'll if you end up taking it or something like that, or supposedly taking it, we'll talk about it over
Well, that's
time for sure.
that is the one good thing about dealing with this kind of thing. You don't have to say alleged because there's no as long as it's research because this is
That's
research.
true.
I don't even have to say alleged because it's
Yeah,
right now there are no laws being broken. Um so until the FDA decides to be a boob again, we're probably good for not saying alleged.
yeah, yeah. I think yeah. So yeah. So when you do research on it, we could talk about what your results are from it. So
Yeah,
it'd
for
be
sure.
interesting.
Absolutely. All right, guys. So stay tuned. We'll make sure to give you links to whatever I end up posting about that as well. But until then, we'll
Yes,
be
sir.
catching y'all next week.
All right, we'll see you guys.
All right, peace.